My husband didn't know I could see his location sharing he forgot to turn off. I noticed the little gray dot on my phone screen at 11:43 on a Wednesday morning while sitting in my car outside the pediatrician's office. Our son Oliver had just finished his 4-year checkup and was buckled in the back seat playing with a toy dinosaur. I'd opened the Maps app to check traffic on the way home when I saw it. Grant's location pin sitting stationary at an address I didn't recognize on Maple Grove Avenue across town. He'd told me this morning he had back-to-back client meetings downtown all day, said he'd probably grab lunch at his desk, kissed Oliver and me goodbye at 7:30 like always. The address on Maple Grove wasn't downtown. It wasn't his office building or any restaurant or client location I knew. I zoomed in on the map and the pin sat squarely on top of a residential house number 2847. My stomach did something complicated and cold. I checked the timestamp. Grant had been at that location for 37 minutes. I sat there staring at the screen while Oliver made dinosaur sounds in the back seat, my mind trying to construct innocent explanations. Maybe a client lived there. Maybe it was a home office consultation. Maybe the GPS was wrong. I drove home on autopilot, my hands tight on the steering wheel while my phone sat in the cup holder like something radioactive. Oliver chattered about the stickers the nurse had given him, and I made appropriate responses while my brain spun through possibilities I didn't want to examine. We'd been married for 6 years, together for 8. Grant was a commercial real estate broker, successful and ambitious, the kind of man who worked late and traveled for conferences and closed deals over expensive dinners. I'd given up my marketing career when Oliver was born because Grant's income could support us, and we'd both wanted a parent home full-time. That decision felt different suddenly, looked different through the lens of financial dependence and professional isolation. I pulled into our driveway in the suburbs, a 4-bedroom colonial we'd bought 3 years ago, the kind of house that screamed successful young family. Oliver ran inside to show his dinosaur to our dog Murphy while I stood in the kitchen staring at my phone. Grant's pin had moved. He was now at a coffee shop downtown, exactly where he should be for a normal workday. The detour to Maple Grove had lasted 1 hour and 14 minutes. I spent the afternoon trying to focus on normal tasks: laundry, lunch, playing blocks with Oliver, walking Murphy around the neighborhood. But my phone was always within reach, the Maps app refreshing every few minutes. Grant moved between locations that made sense. His office, a property showing on the east side. Back to the office. At 3:15, his pin moved to a gym I'd never heard of called Zenith Fitness on the south end of town. He'd never mentioned joining a gym. We had a treadmill in the basement he never used. I Googled the gym and found a sleek website advertising personal training, yoga classes, and luxury amenities. The membership fees started at $200 a month. I checked our joint bank account on my phone and found an automatic payment to Zenith Fitness for $245 every month going back 7 months. 7 months of gym payments I'd never noticed because Grant handled most of the finances and I'd trusted him completely. My hands started shaking. I put Oliver down for quiet time in his room and sat on our bed staring at the bank statement. There were other charges I didn't recognize. Venmo payments to someone named Kelsey Durant. $150 here, $200 there. Irregular but frequent over the past year. Dinner charges at restaurants I'd never been to on nights Grant said he was working late. I called my best friend Lauren from college, the only person I could talk to without completely falling apart. She answered on the second ring, and I told her everything in a rush. The location pin, the gym membership, the mysterious charges, the house on Maple Grove. Lauren was quiet for a long moment, then said, "You need to figure out who lives at that address. And you need to do it without him knowing you're looking." She was a paralegal at a law firm downtown, practical and direct in ways I needed right now. She told me to screenshot everything, to document dates and times and locations, to start building evidence before confronting Grant with accusations. She said men who cheat often gaslight their wives, make them feel crazy for noticing inconsistencies, and that I needed proof solid enough that he couldn't talk his way around it. I thanked her and hung up, feeling slightly more focused. I had a mission now instead of just panic. I went to my laptop and searched the address, 2847 Maple Grove Avenue in the county property records database. The house was owned by someone named Kelsey M. Durant. My vision actually blurred for a second when I saw the name, Kelsey Durant, the same name on all those Venmo payments. I clicked through to the property photos from the last sale 3 years ago. A small craftsman-style bungalow with a neat front porch and blue shutters, worth maybe $280,000 according to the tax assessment. I searched Kelsey Durant on social media with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Found her on Instagram with a public profile. 29 years old, personal trainer at Zenith Fitness, blonde hair in a high ponytail in most photos. Fit and pretty in that specific way that made me suddenly aware of the baby weight I'd never completely lost. Her feed was full of workout videos, green smoothies, inspirational quotes about being your best self. And there, buried in posts from 8 months ago, was a photo of her at a charity 5K race. Standing next to her with his arm around her shoulders, grinning at the camera like he had every right to be there, was my husband Grant. The caption read, "Amazing day raising money for children's literacy with this guy who keeps me motivated." 3 heart emojis, 42 likes. Comments from friends saying they made a cute team. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. Then I sat on the cold tile floor with my back against the tub and cried as quietly as possible, because Oliver was just down the hall, and I couldn't let him hear me break apart. 8 months, maybe longer. Grant had been living an entire separate life with this woman while coming home every night to kiss me and read bedtime stories to our son. Every late meeting, every business trip, every tired sigh about work stress. It was all a performance covering infidelity so casual he'd forgotten to turn off his location sharing. I wanted to call him right then, scream at him over the phone, but Lauren's voice echoed in my head. Document everything first. Build your case. I pulled myself together and went back to my laptop. I needed more than one photo and some Venmo payments. I needed a pattern, a timeline, evidence comprehensive enough that he couldn't lie his way out. I created a new folder on my laptop labeled Home Renovation Ideas, where I started saving screenshots, bank statements, location history, social media posts. I was going to build a case so airtight there would be no room for denial. Grant came home at 6:30 with Thai takeout and a smile. "How was the appointment?" he asked, kissing my cheek like he always did. "Doctor said Oliver's perfect, growing right on track." I watched him ruffle Oliver's hair and felt something die inside my chest. This man I'd built a life with, who I'd trusted completely, was a stranger performing the role of faithful husband. We ate dinner together at the kitchen table, Grant telling stories about a difficult client, while I nodded and responded, and felt like I was watching the scene from outside my own body. After dinner, he played trucks with Oliver on the living room floor, and I did dishes, stealing glances at him and wondering how I'd missed it. Were there signs I'd ignored? Late nights and weekend work trips I'd accepted without question because I trusted him? After Oliver was in bed, Grant settled on the couch with his laptop claiming he had emails to catch up on. I sat next to him scrolling through my phone, watching his location pin on my other device I'd pulled up discreetly. He was right here next to me, but part of me needed to confirm it. Needed to see that sometimes the pin told the truth. Thursday morning, Grant left for work at his usual time. I waited until his location pin showed him at the office downtown, then bundled Oliver into the car. "We're going on an adventure," I told him, my voice falsely cheerful. I drove across town to Maple Grove Avenue, parking half a block away from 2847. The little blue bungalow looked exactly like the property photos. Well-maintained, flower boxes in the windows, a silver sedan in the driveway. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly. Maybe I wanted to see her leave for work, wanted to confirm this was really where she lived, wanted something tangible beyond digital evidence. We sat there for 45 minutes, Oliver getting restless in his car seat until I bribed him with snacks. At 9:20, the front door opened and Kelsey Durant walked out wearing athletic gear and carrying a gym bag. She was prettier in person, confident in her movements as she loaded her bag into the sedan and backed out of the driveway. I watched her drive away and felt hatred so pure it was almost physical. This woman had stolen hundreds of hours from my marriage, had taken my husband's attention and affection and time that belonged to his family. I drove to Zenith Fitness and parked in the lot. The building was modern glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed expensive lifestyle. Through the windows, I could see the reception area, sleek and minimalist. I checked Grant's location on my phone, still at his office. I unloaded Oliver from his car seat and walked inside, holding his hand. The receptionist looked up with a practiced smile. "Welcome to Zenith. Are you interested in a membership?" I smiled back. "I'm considering it. My husband is actually a member here. Grant Thorne? He's recommended it highly, but I wanted to see the facilities myself." The receptionist's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Of course. Let me get someone to give you a tour." She picked up the phone, and within minutes, a trainer appeared. Not Kelsey, thank God, but a muscular man named Jason who walked us through the facility, pointing out the equipment, the yoga studio, the juice bar. I asked casual questions while my mind cataloged everything. This wasn't just a gym. It was a social space, a lifestyle, a community. The kind of place where relationships developed naturally over shared workouts and smoothies. The kind of place where a married man could build a whole secret life. Back in the car, I pulled out my laptop and connected to my phone's hotspot. I logged into Grant's email using the password I'd watched him type 1,000 times, never imagining I'd use it like this. My heart hammered as his inbox loaded. Hundreds of work emails, client communications, industry newsletters. I searched for Kelsey's name and found 37 messages over the past 10 months. Most were brief. "Running late, start without me. Great session today. Dinner Friday?" They had the casual intimacy of people comfortable with each other, inside jokes and shorthand I didn't understand. One email from 6 months ago made my stomach drop. "I meant what I said last night. You make me happier than I've been in years. I know it's complicated, but I want to figure this out." Grant had written that. Had told another woman she made him happy while I was home taking care of our child. I took screenshots of everything and saved them to my hidden folder. Then I searched for hotel bookings and found confirmations for weekend stays at boutique hotels downtown, dates that corresponded with business trips Grant had told me about. Checking the charges against our credit card statements showed he'd paid cash for these rooms, keeping them off our shared accounts. Oliver was getting fussy, so I drove home and tried to maintain some semblance of normal routine. Lunch, playtime, his nap. While he slept, I went through Grant's location history for the past month using the family sharing data I'd never thought to check before. The pattern was clear once I knew to look for it. 2 or 3 times a week, he'd stop at Maple Grove for an hour or two, sometimes in the morning, sometimes late afternoon, occasionally during what should have been his lunch break. The stops at Zenith Fitness were even more frequent, 4 or 5 times a week, always in the evening after work. On nights when he'd told me he was showing properties or meeting clients, his location pin had been sitting at that gym for hours. I thought about all the evenings I'd fed Oliver dinner alone, put him to bed alone, watched TV by myself while waiting for Grant to come home tired from work. He hadn't been working. He'd been with her, building a relationship, creating memories, living a parallel life I knew nothing about. The betrayal was so massive I couldn't process the full weight of it. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated, sustained deception over months. That afternoon, I called Lauren again from my car while Oliver napped inside. I told her everything I'd found, and she listened without interrupting until I finished. "You need a divorce attorney," she said bluntly. "Not next week, not after you confront him. Now, before he knows you know." She explained that in affairs like this, often the cheating spouse was already preparing their exit, consulting lawyers, moving assets, building their own case. I needed to protect myself and Oliver financially and legally before Grant had a chance to do the same. She gave me the name of someone at her firm, a woman named Diana Sheffield, who specialized in high-asset divorces. I made an appointment for the following Monday, using the excuse to Grant that I was meeting Lauren for lunch. The lies came easier than I expected. Maybe because I'd been living with lies for months without knowing it. Maybe because survival required me to be strategic rather than emotional. I spent the rest of the afternoon photographing important documents: our marriage certificate, Oliver's birth certificate, tax returns, property deeds, investment statements. I created digital copies of everything and emailed them to an account Grant didn't know about. Friday morning, Grant announced he had to work late. Big client dinner he couldn't skip. I nodded and said that was fine. I'd feed Oliver and get him to bed. My voice was calm, supportive, the perfect understanding wife. Inside, I was screaming. I knew exactly where he'd be tonight. Not at a client dinner, with her, at some restaurant or maybe her house, living the fantasy where he didn't have a wife and child waiting at home. After Grant left for work, I called my mom, who lived 2 hours away. "Can you come stay with me this weekend? I need your help with something, and I'll explain when you get here." My mom heard something in my voice and said she'd leave within the hour. She arrived at 2 o'clock, and I told her everything while Oliver played in the other room. My mother's face went through shock, anger, and something like grief. She'd always liked Grant, thought we were happy, attended our wedding with pride. Learning it was built on lies hurt her too. She held my hands across the kitchen table and said, "What do you need from me?" I said, "Watch Oliver tonight. There's something I have to do." At 7:30 that evening, I left Oliver with my mom and drove across town to Maple Grove Avenue. Grant's location pin showed him at Kelsey's house, had been there since 5:45. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I parked down the block where I could see the blue bungalow, all the windows lit up warm and inviting. Part of me wanted to march up there and pound on the door, force a confrontation that would shatter Grant's comfortable lies. But the smarter part, the part that sounded like Lauren's voice, said to document and observe. I needed evidence that would hold up in divorce proceedings. I took photos of Grant's car in the driveway, time-stamped and geotagged. I recorded video of the house showing both vehicles present. At 9:15, the front door opened and Grant stepped out onto the porch. Kelsey was with him, wearing one of Grant's shirts I recognized from our closet, her arms around his waist. They kissed on her front porch like teenagers, long and unhurried, completely comfortable. I took photos of that too, even though each click of the shutter felt like a knife in my chest. They stood there talking for several minutes before Grant finally walked to his car. I watched him drive away, heading home to the life he was pretending to value, while maintaining this other life that clearly made him happier. I drove home a different route and got there 15 minutes before Grant. My mom took one look at my face and hugged me hard without saying anything. I showed her the photos and watched her expression darken. When Grant walked in at 10:30 looking slightly disheveled, his shirt untucked in a way that suggested it had been off recently, my mom excused herself upstairs. I sat on the couch and looked at my husband. "How was the client dinner?" I asked. Grant loosened his tie. "Long. Exhausting. The client wants to completely restructure the deal. We were there for hours hammering out details." His lies were so smooth, so practiced. I wondered how many times he'd done this, how many fabricated work events covered affairs. I nodded like I believed him. "Sounds stressful. You should get some rest." I watched him go upstairs to our bedroom, to our bed, and felt nothing but cold calculation. Monday, I'd see the attorney. I'd figure out my options, protect my son's future, and plan my exit from this marriage with the same care Grant had used to maintain his affair. But tonight, I'd let him think everything was normal, that his wife was still the trusting fool he'd been deceiving for months. The weekend passed in surreal slow motion. Grant was home Saturday and Sunday, playing with Oliver, helping with yard work, grilling burgers on the patio like a devoted family man. My mother watched him with barely concealed contempt, but maintained civility for Oliver's sake. I played my part too, the loving wife who brought him lemonade and smiled at his jokes. Sunday evening, after Oliver was in bed, Grant pulled me close on the couch, I feel like we haven't connected much lately. Want to open some wine and just talk? I looked at this man who was asking for connection while maintaining a full relationship with another woman and felt disgust so strong I had to work to keep it off my face. I'm actually really tired. Maybe tomorrow? Grant looked disappointed but nodded. After he fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, planning my future without him. Monday morning, I dressed carefully for my meeting with Diana Sheffield, professional but not trying too hard, wanting to project competence and credibility. My mom stayed with Oliver while I drove downtown to the law offices. Diana Sheffield was in her 50s with sharp eyes and an air of having seen every variation of human betrayal. I showed her everything I'd compiled. The location history, the emails, the bank statements, the photos of Grant kissing Kelsey on her porch. Diana went through it methodically, making notes on her legal pad. When she finished, she looked up at me. This is one of the most thoroughly documented cases I've seen from a first consultation. You've done my job for me. She explained the process of filing for divorce in our state, the division of assets, custody arrangements, potential spousal support. Since I'd given up my career to raise Oliver, I was entitled to significant support while I got back on my feet professionally. The house, the savings, Grant's retirement accounts, it would all be divided. She also pointed out that Grant's affair could be relevant in custody discussions, demonstrating poor judgment and dishonesty. I signed a retainer agreement and authorized Diana to begin preparing paperwork. She advised me not to confront Grant until we had everything filed and he was served, avoiding any chance for him to hide assets or create his own narrative. I left her office feeling something that might have been hope, mixed with terror. That afternoon, I went to a bank branch across town and opened my own checking account, separate from our joint finances. I didn't move any money yet. Diana had advised against that, but I wanted the infrastructure in place. I also went to a storage facility and rented a small unit where I started moving important items. Photo albums, Oliver's baby book, family heirlooms from my grandmother, documents I couldn't replace. I was preparing for war even though Grant still thought we were at peace. It felt powerful and devastating in equal measure. Tuesday evening, Grant mentioned he'd be working late again on Thursday. I checked his calendar and saw nothing scheduled. Checked Kelsey's Instagram and saw she'd posted a story about being excited for a midweek date night. The pieces were so obvious now. I couldn't believe I'd missed them before. I told Grant that was fine. I had some errands to run anyway. The lies between us were stacking up like a wall, each of us building our own version of the truth. Wednesday, I met with Lauren for actual lunch this time. She wanted to see how I was holding up. I told her I felt numb, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart instead of my own. Thursday evening, while Grant was supposedly working late, I drove again to Maple Grove. This time I was prepared with a better camera, a zoom lens I'd borrowed from my mom who did nature photography. I parked in a different spot, more concealed, but with a clear view of 2847. Grant arrived at 6:15. Kelsey opened the door wearing a dress, heels, like she'd prepared for a real date. They kissed in the doorway and he handed her flowers. I took photos of everything. They left together in his car at 6:45. And I followed them to an upscale Italian restaurant downtown called Marcello's. I watched through the window as they were seated at a corner table, intimate and romantic. They held hands across the table. He made her laugh. She fed him a bite of her appetizer. It was the kind of date I couldn't remember the last time we'd had, back before Oliver when we'd been young and in love and hadn't needed to schedule intimacy around childcare. Grant had recreated that with someone else while letting our marriage become routine and obligatory. I took photos through the restaurant window, documentation of a relationship that couldn't be explained away as professional or innocent. I drove home before Grant and was in bed pretending to sleep when he got back at 11:30. He slipped into bed quietly and I felt him settle beside me, probably thinking about her, maybe comparing us in his mind and finding me lacking. The next morning I called Diana and sent her the new photos. She said they strengthened the case significantly, establishing pattern and duration of the affair. She also said the divorce papers would be ready to file by the end of next week. Once they were filed, a process server would deliver them to Grant. She advised having my mother there that day, having a plan for where I'd stay for a few days if needed, being prepared for Grant's reaction, which could range from denial to anger to breakdown. I started making arrangements. My mom agreed to clear her schedule for the following week. Lauren said I could stay at her place if necessary. I packed a bag with essentials for Oliver and me, left it in my car where Grant wouldn't see it. I was preparing for the moment everything would explode. The waiting was almost worse than the discovery, knowing what was coming, but not exactly when. Grant seemed to sense something was off. He kept asking if I was okay, if something was bothering me, suggesting we needed to spend more quality time together. The irony was crushing. Now that I was pulling away emotionally, he wanted to reconnect, probably sensing some shift in the dynamic even if he didn't know the cause. Saturday morning, he suggested we take Oliver to the Children's Museum, make it a family day. I agreed because refusing would raise suspicion and I needed just a few more days of normal. We walked through the museum exhibits holding Oliver's hands between us, the picture of a happy family. Other parents smiled at us. I wanted to scream that it was all fake, that this man was living a double life, that happy families were sometimes elaborate lies. But I smiled back and took photos of Oliver playing and maintained the performance. That evening, after Oliver was in bed, Grant tried to initiate sex. I made excuses about being tired, having a headache, and saw frustration flash across his face before he controlled it. I wondered if he'd go to Kelsey tomorrow to get what I wasn't providing. The thought made me feel nothing, just cold calculation about evidence and strategy. Monday afternoon, Diana called. Papers are filed. The process server will deliver them to Grant's office tomorrow at 2 p.m. Be prepared. I thanked her and hung up with shaking hands. Tomorrow, everything would change. I called my mom and she said she'd be at my house by noon. I packed Oliver's favorite toys, extra clothes, snacks for the car. Lauren texted asking if I needed her to come over, and I said maybe. I'd let her know after. That night, I barely slept. I kept imagining Grant's face when he was handed divorce papers, the shock and confusion and eventual anger. Part of me felt satisfaction at that image. He'd been so comfortable in his deception, so confident I'd never find out. Tomorrow, he'd learn the cost of his lies. But another part of me grieved for what we'd had once, for the young couple who'd believed in forever, for the family we could have been if he'd made different choices. Tuesday morning, Grant left for work with his usual kiss goodbye. I watched him drive away and wondered if he had any idea this was the last normal day of his old life. My mom arrived at noon with overnight bags. We sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee while Oliver played trucks in the living room. Are you ready for this? My mom asked. I said I didn't know, but it was happening regardless. At 2:15, my phone rang. Grant's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately. Then 3 more times in rapid succession. Then a text. Call me right now. What the hell is this? I didn't respond. My mom squeezed my hand across the table. 20 minutes later, Grant's car screeched into the driveway. He came through the door holding the divorce papers, his face red with fury and confusion. What the fuck is this? You're divorcing me? Without even talking to me about whatever problem you think we have? My mom stood up and moved between us. Lower your voice. Oliver is right there. Grant seemed to notice her for the first time, then looked at the bags by the door, then back at me with dawning realization. You've been planning this. How long? Why? I stood up, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I know about Kelsey. I know about all of it. The affair, the lies, everything. It's been going on for at least 8 months, and I'm not interested in your explanations or excuses. Grant's face went through several expressions. Shock, denial, then something like panic. I don't know what you think you know, but this is insane. I'm not having an affair. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos. Him kissing Kelsey on her porch. Them having dinner at Marcello's. His car parked at her house multiple times a week for months. The location history showing exactly where he'd been when he claimed to be working. The emails saying she made him happier than he'd been in years. The Venmo payments. The hotel bookings. I'd printed the most damning evidence and handed him the folder. Grant looked through it, and I watched his lies crumble. His face went pale. Let me explain. It's not what it looks like. I laughed, actually laughed, because the cliche was so absurd. It's exactly what it looks like. You've been living a double life for months, lying to me every day, taking time and money and emotion that belonged to your family and giving it to another woman. And the only reason I found out is because you forgot to turn off your location sharing. Grant tried to approach me, and my mom stepped between us again. Don't. Just don't. Grant's voice cracked. I love you. I love Oliver. This was a mistake. A stupid mistake. But our marriage is worth fighting for. Please don't do this. I looked at the man I'd married and felt only emptiness where love used to be. You're right that our marriage was worth fighting for, I said quietly. But you didn't fight for it. You destroyed it. And I'm not interested in salvaging what you broke. Grant's expression hardened. You've been spying on me. Going through my emails, following me around, taking photos like some stalker. That's not healthy behavior. I felt my mom tense next to me. I documented evidence of your affair because I needed proof for exactly this moment, when you'd try to make me seem crazy for noticing the truth. It worked. I have everything I need for the divorce. Grant's attorney instincts kicked in. You'll never get full custody. I'm Oliver's father, and I have rights. Diana had prepared me for this. I'm not seeking full custody. I want joint custody with primary residence. You can have regular visitation, but you'll pay child support and spousal support because I gave up my career to raise our child while you were building your real estate empire and your secret relationship. Grant looked at me like he didn't know who I was. Maybe he didn't. Maybe the trusting wife he'd been deceiving was gone and this harder version was someone new. I need to see my son. He's in the living room. You can see him for a few minutes, but then I need you to leave. Your attorney will be in contact with mine about logistics. I watched Grant walk into the living room and kneel down next to Oliver. Hey, buddy. Daddy has to go away for a little bit, but I'll see you really soon, okay? Oliver looked confused. Where are you going? Grant's voice broke. Just some grown-up stuff, but I love you so much. Never forget that. He hugged Oliver tight, and I saw tears on his face. Part of me felt cruel for doing this in front of our son, but a bigger part knew that Grant's choices had created this moment, not mine. Grant stood up and walked to the door. He paused there, looking back at me. This isn't over. We can fix this. I shook my head. Yes, it is. And no, we can't. Please leave your house key. Grant pulled his keyring out slowly and removed the house key, setting it on the entry table. Then he left. the door closing behind him with finality. My mom wrapped her arms around me, and I finally let myself cry. Great heaving sobs of grief and relief and rage all mixed together. The next few weeks were brutal. Grant tried everything. Called and texted constantly until I blocked him. Showed up at the house until I threatened to get a restraining order. Sent flowers with apology notes. Had his mother call me crying about destroying the family. None of it moved me because I'd already grieved the marriage during those weeks of secret knowledge when I'd watched him lie to my face every day. The divorce proceedings moved forward. Diana was efficient and ruthless, filing motions for temporary support, establishing custody schedules, itemizing assets for division. Grant's attorney tried to paint me as vindictive and unstable, but Diana countered with the documented evidence of his sustained deception. Kelsey apparently ended things with Grant once she found out he was getting divorced, not interested in being the reason a family fell apart. The irony wasn't lost on me. Grant spiraled without either of us, started drinking too much, missing work, showing up to custody exchanges looking haggard. I felt no satisfaction in his deterioration, just sadness that he'd thrown away everything good for something temporary. Oliver adjusted better than I'd feared, children being resilient in ways adults aren't. He accepted the new normal of 2 houses, 2 bedrooms, split holidays. My mom stayed with us for 6 weeks, helping me transition back to independence. I started applying for marketing jobs, updating my resume with volunteer work and freelance projects I'd done while raising Oliver. The gap in my employment history was explained easily enough. Several companies were interested in my background and experience. 3 months after filing for divorce, I accepted a position at a mid-sized firm with good benefits and flexible hours. The salary was less than I'd made before Oliver, but enough to support us with Grant's court-ordered payments. I felt proud walking into that office the first day, reclaiming the professional identity I'd set aside. My life was smaller now in some ways. A modest apartment instead of a colonial house, budgeting carefully instead of financial ease. But it was honest. Nobody was lying to me every day. Nobody was stealing time that belonged to us and giving it to someone else. Oliver and I built new routines, new traditions, new ways of being family. We were okay, more than okay. We were healing. Grant eventually got his life together enough to maintain regular visitation. He'd apologized genuinely, finally, admitted his failures, started therapy. I didn't forgive him because some betrayals go too deep, but I could co-parent civilly for Oliver's sake. The divorce was finalized 8 months after I'd seen that first location pin on Maple Grove Avenue. 1 year after everything fell apart, I was sitting in my small apartment living room watching Oliver build an elaborate block tower when my phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a post. I opened Instagram and saw it was Kelsey Durant. She'd posted a long caption about lessons learned and growth through difficulty. At the end, she'd tagged several people, including me. To the women I've hurt through my own selfishness and poor choices, I'm sorry. I can't undo the past, but I'm trying to be better. It wasn't really an apology, more like public therapy, but something in me loosened slightly. She was young and had made terrible choices, but at least she recognized the damage. I didn't respond or acknowledge it, just closed the app and went back to watching my son play. Lauren called that evening and asked how I was doing. Really doing. I told her the truth. Some days were hard, grieving what I'd thought my life would be. But most days were good, building something new and real. She said she was proud of me for choosing myself and Oliver over a comfortable lie. That meant more than she probably knew. I'd learned I was stronger than I'd believed, capable of survival and reinvention when necessary. That knowledge was worth more than any marriage built on deception. 2 years after the divorce, I ran into Grant at Oliver's school concert. We sat near each other in the audience watching our son sing with his first grade class, both of us recording on our phones, both of us proud. After the concert, Grant approached me carefully. "He's doing great. You've done an amazing job with him." I nodded. "We both have. He's lucky to have parents who love him even if they're not together." Grant's eyes held regret and something like respect. "I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was selfish and stupid. I know you'll never forgive me and I don't deserve it anyway. But I want you to know I'm grateful you gave me the chance to still be Oliver's father. A lot of women wouldn't have." I looked at this man who'd been my husband, who I'd loved completely, who'd broken everything we'd built. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for Oliver. He deserves his father." Grant nodded and walked away. I watched him go and felt nothing but peace. The anger had burned out, leaving only acceptance. What happened had happened. I'd survived it, learned from it, become someone stronger because of it. That small gray dot on my phone screen had changed everything, revealing truths I needed to know even though they'd shattered my world. Sometimes the worst discoveries lead to the best transformations. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.